Chapter 9. They Call It a Slave. 1, 2, 3. I worked like this for 2 weeks and managed to save up 40 pieces of silver, which meant that I finally made back what I'd thrown at Yazu the day he betrayed me, plus a little more. Something about it feels hopeless. I mean, my attack power severely limited the places I could visit. I didn't get hurt or anything, but one time I tried visiting the forest. I think it was a red balloon. It was attacking me. I was attacking it with my bare hands, and it was hitting back. I must have pummeled the thing for 30 minutes or more, but it showed no signs of weakening. It ruined my mood, and I left the forest with my head hung low. It meant that I couldn't really actually leave the fields, and therefore was forced to do my leveling up here, which I did for 2 weeks. I eventually reached level 4. I wondered what level the other heroes had reached. I didn't know what to think about it. There was still a red balloon chewing on my arm. It just kept going and going, like it could saw through my bone or something. I'd gone to the forest a whole week prior. I must have leveled up since then. I tried hitting the balloon. Clang. My attack was still too low. If my attack was low, I couldn't hurt monsters. If I couldn't hurt monsters, I couldn't get EXP points. If I couldn't get EXP points, I couldn't raise my attack. Damn it! There was no end in sight. I was walking down an alleyway behind the restaurant. It led to the fields. But that day was so different from the rest. You seem troubled, sir. Huh? A strange man called to me from the alley. He was in a top hat and coattails. He was a strange gentleman by any manner, absurdly obese and wearing spectacles. He didn't seem to fit the world, which was much more like the Middle Ages, so he stuck out dramatically from his surroundings. Deciding it was wise to ignore him, I hurried on past. You need people. I stopped in my tracks. He knew exactly what to say to get me to stop. That's why you can't hunt stronger monsters. Everything he said annoyed me, but I have a solution for you. What, recruiting party members for me? No thanks. I didn't have the funds or the desire to hire a greedy capitalist. Party members? Ha ha ha. No, I will provide you with something a little more useful. For example, the man slid over in my direction. Interested? Don't stand so close, you creep. Ha 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 ha. I like you, kid. Fine then, I'll tell you. The gentleman puffed out his chest, looking very important-like, spun his walking stick, and pontificated. A slave! A slave? Yes, a slave. A slave. What was that again? I heard they used to exist in the real world, but now they showed up from time to time in games and manga, like the kind where someone gets summoned to another world. To put it bluntly, it meant that you could own other people, much like someone might own furniture, and you could force them to do physical labor for you. I sort of pictured them as being whipped. Anyways, slaves were living things. Did this mean that slaves were bought and sold here? Why do you think I would want a slave? They don't lie, and they do not betray their masters. Slaves are under a powerful curse. If they contract it or betray their masters, they must pay with their very lives. Now the story was getting interesting. If they disobey, they die. In some ways, that was exactly what I was looking for. Someone who wouldn't use me, and someone that didn't have any funny ideas. My attack was too weak. I needed someone to help me. But people betray you, so I couldn't afford to pay them. I couldn't get anyone to help me. but a slave wouldn't betray me because betrayal meant death. What do you think? I'll hear you out. He smiled. Right this way, sir. He led me down a back alley, and pretty soon I noticed an alarming number of scruffy, dangerous-looking people. The air was filled with aggressive shouts and the sound of fragile things breaking. More than anything, it smelled terrible. Apparently, this world had a bad side too. It was sometime around noon, but there was no light where we were. We turned a corner, and there, at the end of the alley, was something like a circus tent. Right this way, sir. Uh-huh. The slave trader walked with a creepy air about him. It was something like skipping, but he spent more time in the air. He led me towards the tent and pulled back the flap. Let's get this out. Let's get this out of the way up front. If you're tricking me, yes. Your balloon punishments are quite infamous around town. You'll cause a ruckus and then run off, eh? So people were starting to talk about me. Fine. It was a good way to punish groups of bad people, and I shouldn't be surprised that it made me famous. To be fair, there were those that wanted a hero, like yourself, as a slave themselves. I had originally approached you with that goal in mind, but since then I've had a change of heart. Yes, sir. Excuse me? Well, you have all the qualifications of an excellent client. All the qualifications, both good and bad. What do you mean? I wonder, what do I mean? This guy was slippery. What did he want from me? There was a metallic clank, and then a very heavy-looking door swung open. Whoa. The interior was dim, and the smell of rot hung faintly in the air. I also smelled animals. It didn't seem to be a very nice place. There were a number of cages in the room, and human-like shapes moved around them. Now then, this one right over here, I could recommend very highly to you. I moved closer to the cage he indicated and looked inside. Grr. That's not a human. Inside was something with sharp fangs and claws, and covered in thick fur and thick hair. To sum it up simply, it looked something like a werewolf. It was howling just like you'd imagine. This is a Theranthrope. Theranthrope. Here, we consider them, in most respects, people. A Theranthrope. I recognize the idea, as part human, part animal characters appear often enough in fantasy games, although usually as enemies. I realize that I'm a hero and all, but I still don't know all that much about this place. Can you tell me a little more about it, please? Unlike the other heroes, I didn't really know anything about this place. I didn't even know what I was supposed to know. When I was walking around town, I noticed some people, occasionally, with dog ears or cat ears, and cat or dog ears perched on their heads. Every time I saw them, I'd realize that I really was in a fantasy world, but there didn't seem to be very many of them. The Melmarock Kingdom tends to consider humans as higher-order creatures than those other types. It can be a tough place for Theranthropes and demi-humans to live. Sure enough, I saw demi-humans and Theranthropes around town. But just like the slave trader was saying, they were normally adventurers or traveling merchants. So it sounds like they were discriminated against and were only able to obtain low-level work. Okay, fine, but what exactly are these demi-humans and Theranthropes? Demi-humans look similar to humans, but they have some small differences. Theranthropes are technically a type of demi-human, but those sorts of beast-like characteristics are particularly prominent. Yes, sir. Got it. So they are in the same category? That's right. But because these demi-humans are, at least in this country, considered to be one step away from monsters. It's hard for them to live here, so they often end up sold into slavery. I guess I guess I guess every world has its dark side, and because they weren't considered humans, they were preferably suited for slavery here. So yes, and these slaves have this particular So yes, and these slaves have this particular feature. The slave trader snapped his fingers loudly. When he did so, a magical aurora appeared around his arm, and at the same time, some shape on the chest of the werewolf began to glow. Arr! 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 The werewolf began howling in pain, as if something was restricting its chest. Excuse me. The slave trader snapped his fingers again, and the glowing shape on the wolf's chest slowly faded away. Punishment is as simple as a snap of your fingers. How convenient, I whispered, my eyes on the werewolf, now sprawled face up on the floor of its cage. Can I do it too? Naturally. It can even be arranged so that a snap of the fingers is not necessary. It can be worked right into your status magic. Huh. It did seem very convenient. However, a ceremony is necessary. The owner's information must be shared and absorbed by the slave. So the slave can always understand the owner's intention? You have a very good head on your shoulders. The slave trader flashed a sinister smile. He made me very uncomfortable. Sounds fine to me. How much does this one cost? Well, you must understand how useful a thranthrope is in a fight. Naturally, it affects its price. No doubt, gossip concerning my finances has reached the guy's ears. He could say whatever he wanted. I wasn't going to start throwing money around. Think about it. He knew I was in trouble, and he approached me. There was a good chance he was going to try to swindle me. How about 15 gold pieces? I don't know anything about the market price, but I assume you're giving me a good deal? One gold piece was worth around 100 pieces of silver. There was a reason that the king provided our funds in silver, not gold. Gold pieces were worth so much that they were very difficult to exchange. It was much easier to buy and sell in silver, so that the vast majority of commerce in the town used silver, not gold. Of course. ... The slave trader met my silence with a deep smile. You know that I can't afford that, so you started with the most expensive one, right? Yes, well, I can tell you're going to be a great customer regardless. I would be a poor businessman if I didn't start with our best wares. This guy was slimy. For your own information, please take a look at this slave's information. He held out a small crystal to me. I noticed a flashing icon, and soon enough, words appeared before my eyes. Battle slave, level 75, race, Wolfman. He went on to some length about the slave's various skills. Level 75, that was nearly 20 times my own level. If this guy were on my team, my life would be so much easier. I might end up stronger than the other heroes. I had no way to know if that justified the price, though. He didn't really look very healthy anyways. He might end up getting in my way. I wonder if that was why the price was so low. He used to fight in Coliseum tournaments. But he hurt his leg, though, so they were going to dispose of him. That's when I stepped in and bought him. You don't say. So he was damaged goods. His level didn't really matter then. Now then, I've shown you my best. Tell me, sir, what kind of slave are you interested in? A cheap one that isn't broken. We have slaves specialized for battle or physical labor, or, if the rumors are true, I didn't do it. Yes, well, I'm not concerned one way or the other, but which type is your preference? I don't want some kind of domestic use slave, and I certainly don't want a sex slave. Here, I guess the rumors were false. I didn't do it. Yeah, I could have said whatever I wanted. I didn't do it. What I need is someone that could attack monsters for me. That's it. If they were good for something else, that didn't matter. If I could survive the night and the next day, that was enough. Do you have a preferred gender? I think a man would be better, but I don't really care. The slave trader scratched his chin. I have a few, but they are inferior to the ones you've once meant for your personal pleasures. I don't care about appearances. Their levels aren't very high either. If they can fight, we'll level up together. Good answer. Even though you don't trust people, slaves aren't people, are they? If I'm leveling up an object, it's just like leveling up my shield. Already something that won't betray me. You've got me there, he said, suppressing a giggle. Right this way, then. I looked through the shop, which was lined on both sides with a long row of cages. Eventually, the shouts and smells died down, and we entered a quieter area of the shop, or so I thought. Soon the room was filled with the sounds of crying children. I looked around and saw cages filled with dirty children and older demi-humans. They looked miserable. The slave trader continued to lead me along until he suddenly came to a stop. This are the cheapest slaves I can offer you today, sir. And he was pointing to a group of 3 cages. The first was a man inside, though he also had the ears of a rabbit. One of his arms was twisted in an odd direction. He looked to be somewhere around 20 years old. He looked like a documentary definition of a slave. The next held a girl of around 10. She was unbelievably skinny, and her eyes looked terrified. She was coughing. She also had ears similar to dogs, but rounder. She appeared to have a large round tail as well. The third cage held a lizard man, whose eyes darted around the room violently, as if they were looking for someone to kill. He did seem to be more human, to be more like a man than a lizard, though. From the right, there are a rabbit type with a genetic disorder, a raccoon type suffering from panic attacks, and a mixed breed lizard man. So the last one was a mixed breed? They all seem to have severe issues. These are all I can offer you at your range. If we lower the bar even more, then, well. The slave trader glanced over quickly at the back wall. I followed his gaze. You could tell even from this far the smell of death. That smell in the air at a funeral. It was strong, and it was coming from that direction. It also smelled like rot. I feel like I'd gotten sick just looking in that direction. How much are we talking? From the right, 25, 30, and 40 pieces of silver. And what are the levels? 5, 1, and 8. If I wanted a strong fighter, the lizard man was the best option. If I worried about the price, then the rabbit with the genetic disease was the best option. All of them looked very skinny. The rabbit man had a useless arm, but the rest of him looked just fine. And all the others looked miserable, but so did all the other slaves in the tent. Why are they all so quiet? Because they are punished when they make noise. Makes sense. So he was showing me slaves that were well trained, or slaves that couldn't be trained? The lizard man looked like he might be good in a fight, but the other ones probably wouldn't be. Why is the middle one so cheap? She was skinny and scared, and she looked like a relatively normal little girl. Her face wasn't good or bad, just normal. Raccoon types aren't popular with humans. Now, if she were a fox type, I'd be able to get a good price for her. Raccoons were like tanuki. Even at that, she looked so human that you'd think they could get a good price for her. But if raccoons weren't popular, then she probably wouldn't be worth much as a slave. She has panic attacks in the night. It's a lot of work to look after her. And this is the best you have in stock? You really hit where it hurts. She wouldn't be good for hard work, and she had the lowest level. Was this a good thing? I wasn't sure. I caught the eye of the raccoon girl, and I realized, looking into her eyes, how I felt. Yes, this thing was a woman, the same gender as that one that betrayed me. I looked into her scared eyes and immediately thought I wanted to control her. I thought I could just pretend that I turned mine into a slave. Even if the slave did end up dying, it helped me feel better. Alright then, I'll take the middle one. An excellent choice. And it makes my life easier too. The slave trader produced a key and opened her cage. She stepped out and he put a collar around her neck. She let out a yelp. Excuse me. I looked at her quivering in fear and felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. I imagined that other woman, quivering in fear just like this. And it made me feel great. The slave trader took the girl, her collar attached to a chain, and pulled her behind us as we went back the way we came. We came to a slightly more open area in the circus tent, and the slave trader called for some people who appeared immediately. They were carrying a jar that appeared to be full of ink. He transferred a little ink to a small dish and pushed it in my direction. Hero, please give us a little blood, and then the slave registration will be complete, and she will be yours. I see. I pressed the utility knife into the end of my finger. As I did so, I felt my shield react, but I wasn't being attacked, so it didn't stop me from drawing blood. Apparently, it behaved differently outside a battle. I waited for the blood to well up and then let a few drops drip into the small dish. One of the men dipped the brush into the liquid and then pulled back the girl's cloak to paint the magic on her chest. Gah! Ah! The pattern on her chest began to glow, and I suddenly noticed a flashing status icon in my field of vision. Slave acquired. Now opening settings for conditions of use. The window opened, and it was filled with conditions. I quickly skimmed through them. Attacking me in my sleep or any other action that entailed the refusion of my will be punished immediately with pain. Also, a party member icon appeared outside of the slaves menu, and I looked into that. Slave A. I didn't know her name, so that's what it said. Now this slave is yours, hero. Your payment, please. Sure. I gave the slave trader 31 pieces of silver. You've overpaid, sir. For the ceremony, you're going to wring more money out of me somehow, weren't you? You are very wise. If I paid up front, it made it harder for him to say anything about it afterwards. I'd like to see him try to get more out of me now. Well, very well then. You've helped me clear out my stock. By the way, how much do you actually charge for the processing? Ha ha ha. It's included in the cost. Sure it is. He laughed, so I laughed along with him. You're really something. I've got goosebumps. Whatever. I look forward to your future visits. Sure. I started to walk off and called for the slave to come with me. I turned my back on the circus tent. The slave followed behind me, wearing a miserable look on her face. Now then, let's hear your name. She coughed and turned her face away and didn't answer, but that was a stupid thing to do. If the slave disobeyed my orders, she would have to pay. And so the slave punishment curse activated. Gah! She put her hands on her chest and seemed to be in pain. Come on, what's your name? Raftalia. Raftalia it is then. Let's go. She told me her name, so the pain faded. She took a moment to recover her breath. I took her by the hand and we continued to walk down the back alley. Dot dot dot. Natalia looked up at me, her hand in mine. She looked terrified, but we kept walking.